It began quietly, an eerie calm settling over Horizon 1 as the sun dipped below the horizon. There was a stillness that felt unnatural, a sense of anticipation in the air that set Alaya on edge as she made her way through the city. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, that their journey was far from over. As night fell, Alaya walked past the community square where a few residents lingered, their laughter carrying through the air, oblivious to the dark forces converging on their home. She felt a pang of dread, a fear she couldn't name. Horizon 1 had weathered so many challenges, had proven its resilience time and time again. But tonight felt different, as if an unseen hand was reaching out, poised to tear apart everything they had worked to build. The first sign was the sudden plunge into darkness. All at once, Horizon 1's lights flickered, then died, leaving the city in an unsettling silence. Alaya's heart skipped a beat as she looked around, confusion rippling through the community as people called out, their voices tinged with alarm. She pulled out her tablet, but the screen remained dark, unresponsive. Panic began to bubble within her as she realized that the power grid was down. Not just a temporary outage, but a total blackout. The hum of machinery that usually filled the air was gone, replaced by an oppressive silence that weighed heavy on her chest. And then the alarms blared. Shrill and piercing, they shattered the silence, a brutal reminder of the threat that loomed over them. Alaya's pulse quickened as she saw figures moving in the shadows, swift and purposeful, their faces obscured by masks. They moved like phantoms, cutting power lines, severing water supplies, sabotaging the AI that directed Horizon 1's resource allocation. Armed mercenaries, funded by the corporations Horizon 1 had dared to challenge, had come to destroy them. Within moments, Horizon 1 was plunged into chaos. Residents ran through the streets, their faces etched with terror as they scrambled to protect their home. Malik's voice rang out over the alarms, calm but commanding, rallying the community, coordinating defenses with a determination that bordered on desperation.
"We need to secure the entrances,"
he shouted, his voice carrying over the noise.
"Anna, take a team to the eastern gate. Jax, you cover the storage facilities."
Anna, her face a mask of grim resolve, led a group of residents to the eastern entrance, using whatever they could find, benches, tables, crates, to form a barricade against the approaching attackers. Jax, a former soldier turned environmentalist, stepped forward with fierce intensity, directing people with the precision of someone who had seen combat before. Alaya felt a surge of admiration for the community as they rose to the challenge, their fear replaced by a fierce determination to defend the place they had come to call home. She saw familiar faces, Lyle, Tessa, Anna, all working together, their movements fluid and purposeful as they fortified their defenses, each one refusing to yield to the terror lurking in the shadows. But even as they fought, Alaya knew they were up against a formidable enemy. These mercenaries were trained, ruthless, backed by corporations with resources far beyond Horizon 1's. She felt the weight of it pressing down on her, a sense of helplessness that threatened to overwhelm her as she watched the people she had grown to love put everything on the line for a dream that now hung by a thread. In the midst of the battle, Alaya found herself separated from the others, her footsteps echoing through a narrow alleyway as she moved cautiously, her senses on high alert. She rounded a corner and froze, her heart hammering as she came face to face with one of the attackers. He was tall, his face obscured by a black mask, his eyes cold and calculating. In his hand, he held a weapon, its dark metal glinting in the faint moonlight. His gaze fixed on her, assessing her with a detached intensity, as if weighing her worth, her weakness. Alaya's breath caught, but she forced herself to stand her ground, meeting his gaze without flinching. She felt the weight of his scrutiny, the disdain in his eyes as he looked at her. A defender of the world he'd been sent to destroy.
"You can destroy this place,"
she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands.
"but you'll never destroy the idea. This is bigger than any of us."
For a brief moment, the man hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. She glimpsed something in his eyes, a shadow of uncertainty, a trace of humanity beneath the mask. But then his expression hardened and he raised his weapon, his resolve unbroken. Before he could act, Jax appeared at the end of the alleyway, his voice low, commanding.
Back away from her.
The man hesitated again, his gaze darting between Alaya and Jax. With a sneer, he turned and disappeared into the darkness, his footsteps echoing down the alley. Alaya exhaled, relief washing over her as she met Jax's gaze, gratitude shining in her eyes.
Thank you.
She whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. Jax's expression was grim.
We're not letting them take this place, Alaya. Not tonight. Not ever.
As his words echoed in her mind, Alaya felt the weight of the moment settle upon her. The very survival of Horizon 1, a vision built on sacrifice and hope, rested on their strength tonight. She allowed herself a brief moment to absorb the enormity of it, knowing the community relied on her resolve. She would not falter. This was more than a fight. It was a promise, one she would defend with every fiber of her being. As the hours wore on, the battle raged through Horizon 1, a fierce and unrelenting struggle for survival. Malik moved through the city, his voice a constant presence as he directed the residents, his leadership a beacon of strength amidst the chaos. Tireless and unyielding, his determination was infectious, rallying the community and inspiring them to hold their ground. Anna and her team held the Eastern Gate, their makeshift barricade a line of defense they guarded with unwavering resolve. She fought with a ferocity Alaya had never seen before, her movements quick and precise as she defended the entrance, her face a mask of defiance. Tessa joined her, her quiet strength a steady force as she supported the others, her hands steady as she passed supplies, her eyes fierce with determination. In the storage facilities, Jax and his team guarded the supplies, their voices low as they coordinated efforts, their movements efficient and practiced. They knew the resources within those walls were vital to Horizon 1's survival. Without them, the city would crumble. All around her, Alaya saw the faces of people she had come to know, people who had once doubted Horizon 1's ideals, who had questioned the feasibility of a life without ownership or competition. But tonight there was no doubt in their eyes, only a fierce commitment to defend the world they had built together, to protect the vision that had given them hope. As the night wore on, exhaustion began to take its toll. Alaya could feel the weight of it pressing down on her, a bone-deep fatigue that threatened to drag her under. Her muscles ached, her mind foggy from hours of fighting, running, and fearing for her life and the lives of those she cared for. At one point, she found herself leaning against a wall, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she fought to stay upright. The sounds of battle echoed around her, the clash of metal, the shouts of her friends, the relentless blare of alarms that had yet to fall silent. It was then that Malik found her, his face pale, his clothes streaked with dirt and sweat. He looked as exhausted as she felt, but his eyes held a spark of determination, a fire that refused to be extinguished.
We're holding them off,
He said, his voice low but steady.
but we can't keep this up forever.
Alaya met his gaze, her heart pounding as she saw the weight of the situation reflected in his eyes. She knew they were fighting a losing battle, that the mercenaries had the advantage, that Horizon 1's defenses were stretched thin. But even as the reality of their situation settled over her, she felt a surge of resolve, a fierce determination that burned away her fear. She placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, her voice steady as she spoke.
We won't let them take this place, Malik. This is our home. We'll fight for it until we can't fight anymore.
Malik nodded, his expression softening as he looked at her, a hint of pride in his gaze.
I know. And as long as we stand together, they'll never break us.
In the early hours of the morning, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the tide of the battle began to shift. The mercenaries, weary and frustrated by the residents' relentless defense, began to falter, their resolve weakening as they realized that Horizon 1 was not as vulnerable as they had believed. Sensing the shift, the residents rallied with renewed strength, their voices rising in a powerful chorus of defiance as they pushed back against the attackers, fueled by a fierce determination to protect their home. Alaya found herself at the front lines, her heart pounding as she joined Anna and Jax in driving the mercenaries back. Their combined strength, a force the attackers could not withstand. She felt a surge of pride as she looked at the faces around her, each one marked by exhaustion but shining with an unbreakable spirit. As the sun rose, casting a warm golden light over Horizon 1, the mercenaries finally retreated, their mission incomplete, their spirits broken. The sounds of battle faded, replaced by a profound silence that settled over the city, a quiet that held the weight of everything they had endured. The residents gathered in the community square, their faces pale and bruised, their bodies marked by the toll of the night. A somberness hung in the air, a quiet relief mingled with exhaustion as they looked around, taking in the sight of their home, battered but unbroken. Malik collapsed onto a bench, his face pale but triumphant as he looked at Alaya, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth.
"We're still standing, Alaya,"
he said, his voice hoarse but filled with pride.
"They tried to tear us down, but we held on, and that's what matters."
Alaya nodded, her heart swelling as she looked at the people around her, the friends and neighbors who had fought so fiercely to defend the dream they had built together. Horizon 1 had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger than ever. As she stood in the square, surrounded by the people who had become her family, Alaya felt a profound sense of gratitude, a quiet, unshakable belief in the future they were building. Horizon 1 was more than just a city. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and the possibility of a world beyond fear and competition. And as long as they stood together, nothing could break them. In the months following the final assault on Horizon 1, the city's resilience and vision sent ripples through the world. News of their survival and their determination to live without fear or competition inspired a wave of curiosity, admiration, and in some cases, envy. People across the globe, those trapped in outdated economic systems, weary of exploitation and scarcity, began to look to Horizon 1 not just as a city, but as a model of what could be. Alaya and Malik found themselves at the center of a global movement, fielding inquiries from leaders, activists, and citizens who yearned to replicate the freedom and abundance Horizon 1 represented. From nearly every continent, cities, towns, and villages reached out, their people eager to break away from the constraints of traditional economies. Messages poured in, beginning with tentative interest and blossoming into urgent pleas to join what had come to be known worldwide as the Horizon movement. Malik and Alaya realized that their vision needed to expand beyond Horizon 1's borders. To create real change, they would have to form an interconnected network, a coalition of communities aligned with resource-based economy principles. Though exhausted from the battles they had fought, Malik threw himself into the work, his passion reinvigorated by the knowledge that their vision was finally taking root. At first, the task felt overwhelming. They needed to establish communication channels, coordinate resources, and build trust with leaders across the globe, all while maintaining Horizon 1's daily functions. Alaya organized teams to oversee the expansion, delegating responsibilities and bringing in experts in fields ranging from environmental engineering to cross-cultural communication. Her days became a blur of meetings, video conferences, and strategy sessions. She met with mayors, activists, scientists, and students, each eager to learn from Horizon 1's example and build their own resource-based economy models. She guided them through fundamental principles, explaining how Horizon 1's systems worked, how they had overcome internal resistance, and how they had learned to live without the crutches of ownership and currency. At night, Malik and Alaya would meet to review the day's progress, strategize, and dream. Often they stayed up late, poring over maps and blueprints, discussing the challenges of establishing resource-based economy zones in places where the traditional economy was deeply entrenched. There were moments of doubt, times when the scale of their task felt impossible, but they reminded each other of the resilience that had carried them this far, of the people who had fought to protect Horizon 1, and of the world that awaited them.
"We're building more than a city now, Alaya,"
Malik said one night as they stood overlooking Horizon 1, the city lights casting a warm glow over the landscape.
"We're building a movement, A new way of life that will outlast us both.
Alaya nodded, a smile playing on her lips.
And it's just the beginning.
As Horizon 1 expanded its influence, the city itself continued to flourish. Freed from the constraints of ownership and competition, people began to live in ways they had never imagined. Art blossomed beyond convention, murals covered every available surface, sculptures dotted community spaces, music filled the air, and poetry readings drew crowds in the evenings. Artists who had once been limited by the demands of profit and scarcity were free to experiment, to collaborate, to create without limitations. Science, too, thrived in this environment of freedom and abundance. Researchers and inventors had access to resources and collaborative tools without bureaucratic red tape or financial barriers. Scientists who had once worked under corporate pressures now pursued projects driven by curiosity, ethics, and the desire to improve life for everyone. The city's labs buzzed with activity as researchers developed technologies in renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and medicine, sharing their discoveries openly with the world as part of Horizon 1's commitment to transparency and communal knowledge. Alaya often visited the city's education center, where children played, learned, and grew free from the weight of competition. In Horizon 1, education was not a series of tests or a path to status. It was a journey of discovery, encouraging children to follow their interests, learn at their own pace, and work together rather than against one another. She watched as children built solar-powered models, painted murals with local artists, and studied plants in the city's gardens. It was a vision of education she had never seen before, one that celebrated curiosity and compassion over achievement. During one of her visits, she spoke with a teacher named Mara, who had joined Horizon 1 with her family after years of disillusionment with the traditional education system.
Here, we teach them to be human.
Mara said, her voice filled with quiet pride.
To care for each other, to care for the world. These kids, they're not just learning facts. They're learning to live, to create, to share. It's beautiful to watch.
Alaya felt a lump in her throat, a sense of wonder at what they had created and the life they had made possible for these children. In Horizon 1, they were free to be themselves, to grow without the shadow of fear or competition. As Horizon 1's influence spread, the traditional economy began to shift, slowly but unmistakably. Inspired by the city's success, companies and governments worldwide began to adopt elements of the resource-based economy model, creating transitional zones where citizens could live without monetary transactions, experiencing a taste of true freedom. In one city, local leaders established a resource-sharing system for essential goods, allowing residents access to food, clothing, and healthcare without money. In another, a coalition of businesses implemented an open-source model for their technologies, sharing designs and research freely with the world. These small steps, while modest compared to Horizon 1, marked a significant departure from the old ways, a recognition that the world was ready for change. The media began to cover these developments, framing them as the Horizon Effect, a global movement towards sustainability, cooperation, and freedom from scarcity. Horizon 1 had become more than just a city. It was a symbol, a catalyst for transformation, a reminder that another way was possible. Malik and Alaya received messages from people all over the world. Letters, emails, handwritten notes, each one expressing gratitude, hope, and a belief in a future beyond fear. They read these messages together, hearts filled with pride and humility, a shared sense of responsibility fueling their determination to keep going. One evening, Alaya read a letter from a man in South America who had organized his community to adopt resource-based economy principles following an economic crisis. His words were simple but powerful.
You showed us that we are stronger together,
that we don't need to fight for survival. Because of Horizon 1, we know we can live differently. Thank you.
Malik placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft.
This is why we're here, Alaya. This is why we fought. It's all worth it.
But the path forward was not without obstacles. As the Horizon movement grew, it faced fierce resistance from entrenched powers threatened by its ideals. Corporations profiting from scarcity and control were reluctant to loosen their grip on the world's resources, and governments relying on economic dominance resisted the spread of resource-based communities, fearing the erosion of their influence. In some countries, resource-based economy zones were sabotaged, their infrastructures dismantled by those determined to maintain the status quo. In others, transitional districts faced relentless legal battles as powerful interests sought to block their establishment. Malik and Alaya knew they were up against formidable forces, ones that would stop at nothing to protect their power. But they were not alone. As the Horizon movement gained momentum, people across the world rallied in its support, organizing protests, marches, and petitions. Activists forged alliances, scientists shared research, and artists used their work to spread awareness. It was a groundswell of humanity, a force that could not be silenced, a movement that refused to be contained. Malik and Alaya continued to lead, their voices a source of hope and guidance for millions who looked to Horizon 1 for inspiration. They held conferences, hosted workshops, and published papers, sharing their knowledge and experience with anyone eager to help build a world beyond fear. They knew the challenges would be immense, that the opposition would be fierce, but they also understood they were part of something larger, a global community united by a shared vision. As years passed, Horizon 1 and the Horizon movement reshaped the world in ways Malik and Alaya could never have fully anticipated. The transition was gradual, marked by moments of triumph and setback, victories and losses. Yet, over time, the principles of the resource-based economy began to permeate global consciousness, redefining humanity's understanding of wealth, power, and community. Horizon 1 itself had flourished, expanding into new districts and welcoming people from all walks of life who sought a place free from fear and competition. The city had become a mosaic of cultures, languages, and traditions, each one adding to the vibrant tapestry of life within its borders. Alaya often walked through its streets, marveling at the beauty of a world built on shared resources and mutual respect. One evening, as she stood on a hill overlooking Horizon 1, Malik joined her, his face etched with the lines of age and experience. Together, they took in the view, the city lights stretching far into the distance, a beacon of hope in a world that had once been dark.
Did you ever think it would come to this?
Alaya asked, her voice filled with quiet wonder. Malik smiled, his gaze steady.
I always hoped it would, but to see it, to live it, it's more than I ever dared to dream.
A profound peace settled over Alaya, a quiet, unshakable belief in the future they had built. Together, they had created something extraordinary, a legacy of hope and resilience that would outlast them both, shaping humanity for generations to come. As the world embraced the Horizon movement, Horizon 1 became a place of pilgrimage, drawing visitors from every corner of the globe. People came to witness the community that had defied the odds. The place that had proven a life beyond fear was possible. They came to learn, to be inspired, and to carry the ideals of Horizon 1 back to their own communities. Malik and Alaya knew they had fulfilled their purpose, offering the world a new path forward. They watched as others took up the mantle, as new leaders emerged, and as Horizon 1's vision spread across borders, cultures, and generations. Horizon 1 had become more than a city. It was a movement, a symbol of humanity's potential, a promise of a future grounded in trust, compassion, and shared abundance. And as long as that promise endured, Malik and Alaya knew their work would live on, woven into the fabric of a world forever changed. Years had passed, and Horizon 1 had blossomed into a testament to resilience, trust, and cooperation. Malik and Alaya could hardly fathom the scope of what they'd built, a city of shared abundance, free from the fears of scarcity and competition. Horizon 1 was no longer just an experiment. It had become a model, inspiring communities worldwide to join in the vision of a resource-based economy. The children who grew up within Horizon 1 roamed its green spaces freely, their laughter filling the air. Unburdened by fear or the pressures of competition, they were raised in a world where their needs were met, their dreams encouraged. For them, cooperation, shared abundance, and unity were simply a way of life. values that had once seemed unimaginable to those who'd arrived from outside. Standing atop one of the city's towers, Malik's 70-year-old eyes shone with pride. His vision had become a reality, built on commitment, careful design, and the spirit of everyone who had embraced its ideals. Alaya stood beside him, her gaze warm and resolute. Though younger than Malik, her face bore the subtle lines of battles fought together, yet her eyes held a quiet peace. Beyond Horizon 1, the world had begun to change. Inspired by the city's success, communities across the globe adopted elements of the resource-based economy model. Resource sharing became the norm, and cities and towns connected through vast networks of mutual support. What once seemed an impossible dream had, at last, taken root. One afternoon, Alaya sat with a group of children in Horizon 1's education center. Bright-eyed and endlessly curious, they asked questions about the world beyond, puzzled by the struggles they'd heard of but couldn't quite grasp. A young girl named Marin raised her hand.
Dr. Chen, why do people outside have to work so hard for food?
She asked, her face full of innocent confusion.
Why don't they just share it like we do?
Alaya smiled, her heart swelling with both pride and hope.
You see, Marin, for a long time people didn't realize there was enough for everyone. They thought they had to compete to survive. But here in Horizon 1, we're showing a different way, where sharing ensures everyone has enough.
Marin nodded, as if this answer were as natural to her as sunlight or rain. Watching the children play, their laughter filling the room, Alaya felt a profound sense of fulfillment. These children were Horizon 1's true legacy, a generation unburdened by the shadow of scarcity, knowing only abundance and the joy of shared purpose. As Malik aged, his role in Horizon 1 evolved. He was no longer on the front lines of decision-making, but had become a trusted advisor, guiding the next generation of leaders. Among them was Aero, a young man raised in Horizon 1, embodying its core principles with both strength and compassion. Aero was a natural leader, inspiring others through his commitment to the vision that had shaped his life. By now, however, most decision-making had transitioned to Horizon 1's AI systems, designed to manage the city with precision and fairness. Soon, human oversight would phase out almost entirely, as the AI operated autonomously, optimizing resources and addressing community needs in real time. Aero and his team worked tirelessly, expanding Horizon 1's influence and supporting resource-based economy communities worldwide. Alaya watched as he led workshops, mentored younger residents, and traveled to distant cities to share Horizon 1's model. In him, she recognized the same spirit of hope and vision that had once fueled Malik. One evening, as they strolled through the city gardens, the air filled with the scent of fresh herbs, Aero spoke, his tone contemplative.
Do you ever feel overwhelmed, Alaya?
He asked.
Carrying this forward?
Alaya smiled, nostalgia softening her gaze.
Many times, but I always came back to why we started this. To create a world beyond fear and scarcity. That purpose kept me grounded.
Aero nodded, a look of quiet determination in his eyes.
I'm ready to carry this forward, Alaya, to continue what you and Malik began.
As Alaya looked at him, pride swelled within her. Horizon 1's future was in capable hands, and though the world would continue to change, she knew that Aero and others like him would uphold the dream they had built together. News of Horizon 1's success spread across the globe, transforming the world in ways Alaya and Malik had once only dared to imagine. Communities everywhere began adopting elements of the resource-based economy model, forming networks where resources moved freely, where sustainability became not just a goal, but a way of life. Corporations that once thrived on scarcity adapted, embracing open-source technologies and shared resources. Governments restructured to support these networks, ensuring resources could flow freely across borders. Letters poured in from every corner of the world, stories of towns and villages inspired by Horizon 1's example. Each message was a reminder of the profound change they had ignited. A village in Southeast Asia, once devastated by drought, now thrived with a communal water and energy system. A remote town in northern Canada had transformed into a flourishing resource-based economy community, its residents embracing a newfound abundance. Everywhere they looked, Alaya and Malik saw signs of a world reshaped by trust, sustainability, and hope. The annual harvest celebration marked Horizon One's transformation from scarcity to abundance. Residents gathered in the central square, tables heavy with food from their gardens, the air alive with laughter and the scent of freshly baked bread. Children ran barefoot on the grass as music played, their faces lit with joy. As night fell, lanterns cast a warm glow over the square, illuminating the faces of those who had built, nurtured, and sustained this place. Malik stood at the center, his face softened with gratitude as he took in the scene. He watched as people laughed and shared stories, a community bound by shared purpose. In a quiet moment, Alaya joined him, resting her hand on his shoulder.
Look how far we've come, Malik,
She whispered, her voice thick with emotion.
This is the world we dreamed of.
Malik nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek.
And it's even more beautiful than I could have ever imagined.
With a gentle smile, Alaya took a loaf of bread from the table, breaking it in her hands.
This is what we've worked for,
She said, her voice carrying over the crowd.
a life where we all share in the harvest, where there's enough for everyone.
She passed the bread to Malik, who broke a piece and handed it to the nearest child. One by one, the residents took pieces, each bite a symbol of their shared commitment. Together, they had cultivated abundance, not just of food, but of trust, community, and hope. As dawn broke over Horizon One, Malik and Alaya stood alone on a hill overlooking the city. The morning light bathed the gardens, the communal spaces, and the solar towers in a soft glow, a living testament to everything they'd built together. Malik's voice was quiet, filled with warmth.
Thank you, Alaya, for believing in this with me.
Alaya squeezed his hand gently.
It was never just your dream, Malik. It was ours.
They stood in peaceful silence, watching as the city stirred to life. Laughter rang out as children played and people gathered, their faces reflecting the hope they had woven into each corner of this place. As Malik looked over Horizon One, a sense of completion washed over him. The city and the movement it had sparked had taken root, blossoming into a legacy that would endure beyond them both. With a final grateful glance at Alaya, Malik felt a quiet peace settle within. Together, they had created something extraordinary, something that would inspire generations, a world built on trust, compassion, and the enduring belief in a brighter future. Horizon One was more than a city. It was a promise. And as long as people believed in a world beyond fear and scarcity, humanity would thrive, flourish, and forever reach beyond the horizon. The distant city nestled in the valley was a seamless blend of ancient beauty and visionary design, where mountains framed buildings that caught sunlight with solar harvesting windows, casting a gentle glow on sustainable structures. It was a place born from the ideals of Horizon One, a city shaped by principles that had, generations ago, transformed humanity's path. Yet for the young who grew up here, this world was still filled with potential, ready for new ideas and innovations to take root. In the learning hall at the city's heart, a group of students gathered around a hollow table, vibrant projections suspended mid-air as they prepared for today's lesson. This session was different. It was a journey into the lives of those who had dared to build the first resource-based economy, exploring the visions of Jack Fresco and the legacy of Horizon One's founders. Malik and Alaya's story wasn't just history to them. It was part of their identity, the foundation that had allowed them to live in freedom and abundance. The students leaned in, captivated as the hollow table displayed scenes from decades past. Horizon One's earliest struggles, the spirit of its people, and the resilience that had bound them together. Vivid images of Malik and Alaya appeared, hovering like memories brought to life, their determined faces illuminating the resolve that had sparked an entire movement. One young woman, her eyes gleaming with intensity, closed the holophile. She looked to her friends, her voice steady but alive with inspiration.
"We have a lot to live up to,"
she said, her words carrying a quiet strength that held the group in silence.
"but if they could build something from nothing, so can we."
Her friends nodded, their expressions mirroring her conviction. They felt the weight of the legacy they had inherited, yet also a thrill, a sense that their generation too would add to this story, shaping the world in ways that Malik, Alaya, and the original visionaries had only dreamed of. As the students filed out of the hall, their conversations buzzed with the lives and legacies they'd just studied. Malik's resilience, Alaya's steadfast leadership, and the community's dedication to building a world free from fear and scarcity, all of it felt both inspiring and overwhelming. These weren't just stories from the past, they were the foundation of the society the students lived in, a world shaped by Malik and Alaya's dreams, where competition had been replaced by cooperation, and resources and knowledge flowed freely across borders. One student, Zara, couldn't shake thoughts of Malik's journey and his unwavering faith in what had once seemed impossible. As she walked with her friends through the open, tree-lined plaza, connecting the hall to the city's heart, she voiced her thoughts.
"Malik didn't just build a city,"
she said, her gaze focused ahead.
"He built a foundation for all of us, one that's still growing. But just because we have all this doesn't mean the work is over."
Her friend Leo nodded thoughtfully.
"It's strange to imagine, isn't it, that people once had to fight just to survive? I can't picture a world where everyone was seen as competition or where basic needs weren't guaranteed."
Zara smiled, a spark of determination lighting her eyes.
"That's exactly why they created Horizon 1, to make sure no one would ever have to live like that again."
As they continued their conversation, it took on a new urgency. They knew their generation faced unique challenges: climate shifts, population growth, the need for innovation in resource management. Horizon 1 and the resource-based economy model had transformed much of the world, but new hurdles and untapped possibilities awaited them. It was now their turn to carry the torch forward, adapting Horizon 1's principles to the present and future. In her journey, Zara encountered resistance she had rarely faced before. People clung to the familiar, tethered to systems they'd known all their lives and wary of abandoning them for a way of life they couldn't yet grasp. Their skepticism, grounded in fear and uncertainty, weighed heavily on her, and doubts began to creep in. But in these moments, she remembered Horizon 1's story. The struggles, the courage it took to overcome resistance, to foster trust and inspire hope. Her determination deepened, knowing that true transformation required patience and an unwavering faith in the power of possibility. In the weeks that followed, Zara couldn't shake the sense of purpose sparked during that lesson. She began to study Malik and Alaya's writings and recordings, absorbing their wisdom, insights, and struggles. She pored over the blueprints and documents that outlined Horizon 1's systems, learning how each component worked and how everything connected to the whole. One evening, surrounded by hollow projections of Horizon 1's early designs, she made a decision. She would become a leader within the global resource-based economy network, helping to guide humanity's next phase. She would dedicate herself to expanding this model, bringing its principles to communities that had yet to fully embrace it. Her family was supportive, understanding the weight of her choice. They knew that her generation faced new challenges, and that Zara, like Malik and Alaya before her, was ready to confront them with courage and conviction. She began her journey by reaching out to mentors who had worked alongside Malik and Alaya in Horizon 1's later years. These elders, now leaders in their own right, shared stories of the city's struggles and triumphs, of the resilience it had taken to build a new way of life. Zara listened intently, each story deepening her sense of purpose. Through them, she learned that while Horizon 1 had reshaped much of the world, there were still areas clinging to the old ways, places where scarcity and competition persisted, where resources were hoarded instead of shared. Zara knew it was in these places that her work was needed most. After months of preparation, Zara embarked on her first mission as part of the resource-based economy network's new generation of leaders. Her goal was to connect with communities that had only partially embraced the principles pioneered by Horizon 1, helping them bridge the gap to fully integrate these ideals. She traveled across continents, visiting cities, towns, and villages, meeting people from diverse cultures, each with unique challenges and perspectives. Her journey took her to a small village in northern Africa, where water scarcity was a constant struggle. Working alongside local engineers and community leaders, Zara helped implement sustainable water-sharing systems inspired by Horizon 1's models. She met with farmers who had battled the arid soil, introducing techniques and technologies to increase crop yields without exhausting the land. Zara's presence sparked a wave of enthusiasm, particularly among the young people who were eager to learn, create, and transform their lives. She held workshops, teaching resource-based economy principles and showing how trust and cooperation could build a community where everyone's needs were met. In another city, Zara encountered resistance. The people there were skeptical, hesitant to let go of the structures they'd known all their lives. They questioned whether a world without ownership was sustainable and if humans could truly live without competition. Undeterred, Zara met with these skeptics, listened to their concerns, and shared her experiences. She spoke of Malik and Alaya, of the courage it had taken to build Horizon 1 in a world that once scoffed at the very idea. Slowly, she began to see a shift, a willingness to imagine change, a spark of curiosity that hadn't been there before. As Zara's journey continued, she connected with other young leaders inspired by Horizon 1's legacy. Together, they formed a coalition, calling themselves the Horizon Builders, a name that honored Malik and Alaya's vision while embracing their own responsibility to shape the future. The Horizon Builders traveled the world, establishing new resource-based economy communities, strengthening existing ones, and supporting those struggling with the transition. They worked in rural villages and bustling urban centers, prosperous cities and struggling towns, spreading the message that humanity's true potential lay in cooperation, abundance, and the willingness to share. Each member brought unique skills and perspectives. Leo, Zara's friend from school, had a gift for designing energy systems, tirelessly developing new technologies for sustainable power. Amara, another member, specialized in education, creating curriculum models that emphasized empathy, collaboration, and creative problem-solving. Together, they formed a powerful team, united by a shared vision and a deep respect for Horizon 1's ideals. They understood that they were part of a long journey, that the world they were building required patience, resilience, and an unyielding belief in humanity's potential. Back in her home city, Zara often returned to the holotable in the learning hall, the very place where she had first read about Malik, Alaya, and the early days of Horizon 1. Now she gathered with students around that same table, sharing stories of her travels, of the communities she had helped, and of the lives transformed by the principles of the resource-based economy. The holotable now displayed scenes from Zara's own journey, images of the communities she had visited, the people she had met, and the innovations she had helped bring to life. She was no longer just a student of Horizon 1's legacy. She had become a living part of it, a continuation of a dream that had once seemed impossible. One evening, standing before a group of young students, Zara spoke of the responsibility they all shared, of the work that still lay ahead.
The world is always changing,
She said, her voice steady.
It's up to us to guide that change, to ensure we don't lose sight of what Horizon 1 taught us.
She paused, her words carrying the weight of Malik and Alaya's vision.
They showed us that we could live without fear, that we could create a world where everyone has enough. But it's our job to keep that dream alive, to help it grow, and to carry it forward.
The students listened in rapt silence, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the holotable. Zara saw in their eyes the same spark that had driven her, the same determination that had sustained Malik and Alaya through every challenge. She knew these young people, too, would become Horizon Builders, adapting the legacy to meet the challenges of their time. As she looked into their faces, Zara felt both the weight of the legacy she was passing on and the hope it represented. She knew they would face a world still holding tightly to scarcity and competition, Yet she also saw in them the same fire of hope that had kept her moving forward. She felt certain that even as they encountered resistance, they would persist, driven by the conviction that had brought Horizon 1 to this moment. With each generation, the vision grew stronger, more resilient, a movement that would continue, evolving but undeterred by obstacles. The dream of Horizon 1 was no longer a fragile ideal. It was a resilient legacy, ready to shape the future. As the years passed, the Horizon Builders' influence continued to spread, reaching every corner of the world. The principles of the resource-based economy became more than an ideal. They evolved into a way of life, a global ethos uniting people across cultures, borders, and languages. Cities flourished as centers of creativity and innovation, places where people came together to solve problems, to share knowledge, to celebrate their shared humanity. Education became a lifelong journey, unbound by grades or competition, driven purely by curiosity and collaboration. The concept of wealth shifted, measured now by one's contributions to society, by the well-being of communities, by the health of the planet. And at the heart of it all was Horizon 1, a city that had once been only a dream, now a living, breathing reality. A beacon that had inspired generations to look beyond the horizon, to see the world not as it was, but as it could be. Zara, now a mentor herself, often returned to Horizon 1, to the place where it all began. She would walk through the city's green spaces, the community gardens, the solar towers that rose proudly against the sky, a testament to the resilience of those who had built them. She would visit the learning halls, where new generations of students gathered around hollow tables, their eyes wide with wonder as they learned about the world Malik and Alaya had dared to imagine. Looking into their faces, Zara felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a quiet certainty that Horizon 1's legacy would live on, carried forward by those who believed in humanity's potential, in a world built on trust, compassion, and shared abundance. The dream had not only survived, it had thrived, reaching across time and space, inspiring each new generation to build a future without boundaries, to create a world where everyone could live in harmony, where there was always enough for all. And as long as there were those who looked to the horizon, who believed in the promise of a world beyond fear, that dream would never die. The journey of Horizon 1 and the world it inspired would not have been possible without the pioneering vision of Jacques Fresco and Roxanne Meadows, founders of the Venus Project. Their work introduced a transformative concept of what the world could become, a world where scarcity, competition, and the limitations of outdated systems would give way to cooperation, abundance, and sustainable prosperity. Jacques Fresco's ideas were radical for his time, challenging the very foundations of society and envisioning a world based on scientific understanding and resource management instead of money and ownership. His vision extended beyond architecture and technology. It was a blueprint for a wholly new way of life. Roxanne Meadows, with unwavering dedication, brought Fresco's vision to life, sharing it with the world and inspiring countless others to imagine what humanity could achieve if it abandoned systems that divided rather than united. The Venus Project offered a model for a world that respected both humanity and the planet, where human ingenuity served not profit, but the well-being of all. Their concept of a resource-based economy provided the intellectual foundation upon which Horizon 1 was built. Fresco and Meadows' work emphasized that resources must be managed with people and the planet's well-being at the core, a guiding principle for the architects of Horizon 1 as they reshaped their world. For those moved by Horizon 1's journey, the Venus Project continues to be a beacon of guidance and inspiration. To learn more about the resource-based economy model, explore their pioneering ideas, and understand the scientific, ethical, and social principles behind this alternative way of life, visit thevenusproject.com. At the Venus Project, you'll find resources exploring the philosophy and applications of a resource-based economy, educational materials, documentaries, and interviews with Fresco and Meadows. They illustrate a possible transition from a profit-driven society to one grounded in cooperation, technological innovation, and environmental stewardship. The website also offers ways to get involved, connect with like-minded individuals, and join discussions on how we can collectively build this vision. The story of Horizon 1 reflects a path inspired by the Venus Project's vision, a path that encourages us to imagine a world without artificial constraints, where human potential and compassion drive progress. Fresco, Meadows, and the Venus Project invite us to dream beyond current limitations, to envision a society where humanity lives in harmony with itself and the Earth. By exploring their work, we take a step toward realizing this future. As long as people look to the horizon with the dream of a world built on shared resources, respect, and cooperation, the legacy of Jacques Fresco, Roxanne Meadows, and the Venus Project will endure, inspiring future generations to build a world free from fear and scarcity. The journey begins not in distant cities, but here and now, with each of us daring to imagine, to learn, and to create.